Okay, so the first thing you have to do when you have any image is you have to make sure that it's the right size. So our band posters are going to be 11 by 17, well, our band layouts. You can decide if they're horizontal, vertical, it's up to you. This image would obviously fit better with a vertical layout since you could go down this way. So let's go ahead and go image size, and check the size. All right, so right now it looks like it's huge. It's 20 inches by almost 21 inches by 15, a little over 15 and a half, but the resolution is only 72. And for print, we know we need 300. So to find out what the size of the image is at 300, we uncheck resample. So resample, if it's checked when we change sizes here, will add or delete info from the image. And we're just rearranging the info. So I unchecked resample and I'll type in 300 and then I'll check resample back on. So it's only 5 by 3. That's really tiny. So if you can't find a big enough image and you are going to blow it up in Photoshop, you have to cover up the pixelization that occurs. So I'm going to blow this up. Let's see. I'm going to make the width 8. I think that should be good. Maybe 8.5. I'm going to hit OK. Now, if we look, it doesn't look too bad from a distance, but if we zoom in, we can see there's lots of weird JPEG artifacts occurring that are causing distortion in the image, and we don't want that. We can't have the image be totally 100% realistic. It won't happen, but we can edit it to keep it fairly photorealistic looking. So first thing to do is go to your layers and let's copy this, Command J to make a copy. And I'm going to turn off that top layer and I'm going to click the bottom layer and we're going to go to Filter, Blur, Surface Blur. There we go. I'm going to pull it down a little so I can see some edges of things. So what you want to do is you want to set your blur so you can still see the edges of stuff. There we go. But you're still getting lines. So basically you're kind of blurring the pixels on this bottom layer. So I am going to hit OK. Let me zoom in. So it's kind of fairly blurry. To be fair, the image was a little blurry. And if I hit Command Z and then redo it, you can see how it changed things. Okay, so we're leaving that layer. It's not terrible. We've kind of blurred that large areas of color. We still have some of the details. So let's click on that top layer and select it. Now there's a couple different things you can use to cover up the pixeliness. Let me zoom in where that is really pronounced. One is, let's go to Filter, Filter Gallery. And you can choose under Sketch, Halftone Pattern. Now you want to make sure that that your swatches are set to black and white. And you can hit D for default and X actually flips them. So you want black to be foreground, white to be background. Go to your halftone. And I'm keeping this, the size of the halftone pattern really small as it'll go, because that'll keep more info. And the contrast, you want to keep the details, so the contrast is fairly low too. And then I'm going to hit OK. Now, here we go. Let's go on in on his face, or go back here actually. You can tell that the pixely area, because we've put like a square grid over the pixely area, we've covered up the pixels by replacing them essentially with pixels. All right, well, let me change. We can go through And let me zoom back out. Oops. I'll put it on overlay for the moment. Ignore that. Okay, so that's overlay. It's a little blasted out. I'm going to go down to maybe soft light. It doesn't quite blast out her face so much. And you can also pull down the opacity a little. So there we go. Our image is not totally realistic, but it looks pretty photographic still. And the little halftone pattern actually kind of fits the band, being a kind of country gothic. You could also go further and use color balance to tint that top layer if you want to, make it blend in a little more. So there, that's what I blended it a little. Tinted it a little. There we go. There it is with no blend. She's a little washed out, so you still really need that bottom layer. All right, so that's one way. Let me get back to the original layer. There we go. So another one that's really good in this situation is filter gallery at the menu at the top. And under artistic, film grain, like just throwing some actual extra pixels on there to make it look like you're doing that purposefully. And again, if we zoom in here, we don't really see that trouble area because it's covered with extra pixels. And again, you can try different blend modes, see what you get. So I use multiply to keep your face from getting blasted out. And now those pixels are kind of hiding your trouble areas, so that's good. So I backed up to the original, and you can also try filter gallery. Let's try watercolor. So what you're looking for is filters that are going to smooth out those sorts of edges. And remember, you can go over here and you can edit, you know, every, oof, we don't want to go that way. We want to go for brush detail, every filter. So let me hit that, Command 0. And since this tries to make it like a watercolor painting, it also will cover up those pixely areas. And there's, you know, you could try different filters in there. Let me blend this a little with the original so we have some of the colors from the original showing through. And there we go. That really helps that trouble area. So you could try different filters and overlaying them while surface blurring one copy. So what you do, you take your original, you blow it up, you make a copy, turn off the top layer, surface blur this layer, and then try using different filters to blend this layer in with a layer that's more edges and colors to hide any pixelization that results in your image being blown up. So what else can we do? Let's go over to Illustrator. I'm going to make a new 11 by 17 inch document. I'm going to make it 11 by 7. So make it a tabloid document 11 by 17. We're going to say File, Place. Let me grab the original Blanche that we know. Now this is the one that was only 2 by 3. Now it's, or that was only like, let me restart that. Okay, so I'm an illustrator and I have a tabloid document. And I'm going to take that Blanche photo that we saw earlier that we knew wasn't 300 DPI and was like 20 by something. And you're going to see it looks really big in here, but we know the resolution isn't enough. Actually, let me double click on the artboard tool, which is Shift O. Just double click it and change the orientation. See, it still says tabloid. Hit OK, there we go. So let me size this down. Hold it. Keep it, don't stretch images. Never do that. It always looks real bad. All right, so now I'm going to go to the top and you see it says image trace, and beside it is this tiny little arrow pointing down. Click on that for your tracing presets, and you're going to choose high fidelity photo. Now, do you have to choose that? No, depending on your image, maybe something else would work better. I'll show you some of the others. Yeah, that's not very useful. but some other thing might give you an effect you like. So what image trace does is it looks at a pixel-based image and auto traces it into a vector. And as you can see, it can be a little bit time intensive. So that was a 16 colors. You know, it looks like one of those oil painting kits where you stand far back. So let's go to high fidelity photo. And we'll do that one and see what results it gives us. Now, depending on your image, and if your image is super small and you image trace it, it's just going to look real blurry and undefined. But if it's like, you know, medium large, you can usually get away with it. So it's taken a long time. It's thinking. Okay, and I'm going to hit expand to have it finish the auto trace. And there we go. And holy moly, that's a lot of pixels. Okay. All right. Now, if you zoom in, it still kind of looks like one of those paintings, but a little more detailed version. So from a distance, that looks okay. If that effect was acceptable on your image, you could go with it. You can work on it from Illustrator from here if you want. In other words, just keep it in Illustrator. Or if you want to go back into Photoshop or you want to make this a pixel-based image, you can say File, Export, Export As, and this is going to come up. And we will choose, let's choose JPEG for now. It's easy enough. And I'll give it a name, Blanche Trace, because it wants to know where to save it, and I'm saving it in the band folder. CMYK's, it's fine if you're done working on it. If you're going to still work on it in Photoshop, make it RGB. So CMYK is for print, RGB is for screen. So when you're working on something on a screen, RGB, or if you're uploading it to Flickr, RGB. CMYK for print. So right now it's 300. Now, if you wanted to be bigger, you could even type in, say, 600, and then it'll make the resolution 600. And when you bring it into Photoshop, you can lower it to, you know, uncheck resample, lower it to 300, and it'll be an even bigger image. And I'll show you what I mean by that. I'll make it 600. Since I'm going back into Photoshop, I'll make it RGB. One thing that gets everybody all the time, me included, let me go back to export. Export as JPEG. Down here is this little thing that says use artboards. I didn't check it because what that will do is it'll restrict everything in your image to the page size you have. So if you had a layout that was 11 by 17 with a bleed or even maybe some other objects off of your artboard, you want to check this so when it makes a JPEG, it doesn't clump that all together. All right, let's go. All right, so here we are back in Photoshop. That's the one we just did with the layers. Let me open up the one I just exported, the Blanche Trace. Hit OK. And we'll go to image size. And we can see it made it 600 at 12 by 9. So this is a really big image. If we uncheck resample and make it 300, it goes to 24 by 18, probably way bigger than we need. But that's okay because it's good to know. And sometimes maybe you do want an image really large. Maybe you want to figure out some way to do that. If you blew it up in Photoshop to this size and tried to filter it and stuff, you'd probably have a mess. But if you live trace it and bring it back into here, you might get away with it. It's one of those things you just trial and error, always see how well it'll work. Some of the things that make live trace more successful are sharp edges and big fields of color, which this doesn't necessarily have. This has a lot of, you know, different colors and shadows and stuff. But, you know, you could pass that off for this particular band as a style you wanted. And that's something you just have to think about when editing your images. Does it fit the style you need? Can you get the results you want with what you have?